Welcome to the show, everyone. My name is Christina, and I am scoping weekly about my organic garden located in Southern California in San Diego. So I'm just showing you weekly what's happening in my garden. One thing that is important to me is that I garden only organically. So today's show will be about looking at roses that are blooming right now in my garden. I have a special affinity for roses, and I just love them, and roses in general do very well here in Southern California. But the other part of the show will be that I will have a look at the plants that I planted this summer to just find out with you how they are doing. And I have to say that's really a little bit of a tricky thing, because we had such a hot summer this year, and hardly any rain, and it's really hard to establish plants that are planted in this heat. And even though when we had already technically, regarding the calendar, autumn, it was still very, very hot. Welcome to the show. Again, my name is Christina, and I'm scoping about my organic garden in San Diego. And today I'm showing you the roses that are blooming right now, and I will also talk about plants that I just planted recently and show them to you, and we will find out together how they are doing. The rose that you are seeing right now is actually called Pink Pet, and that's actually a very durable rose for a hot climate. And I will go even a little closer. You see it has pom-pom-like small blooms. They're just very charming, I think, and that's a good rose for a cottage garden or a cottage garden style garden. So it just has made a nice spray. We will just show the spray to you. Again, very healthy rose, very durable rose, really a rose that I would recommend. So then let's just start with having a look at the plants that I planted this summer. So this is an established plant. This is Salvia Mystic Spires Bloom, and you see it's a little hard with the light condition. Part of the plant is in the shade, and part of the plant is in the glaring sun. We are again having a very hot day here today, and I don't know if you can see it, but it's really buzzing with bees. I don't know if you probably cannot hear it, but so many bees are using this plant as a food source. Always makes my heart sing that I'm able to offer the pollinators some food, especially the bees. I think many of you have heard how endangered the bees are, how many bees have died and are dying. So it's really nice to offer them a healthy food source that is not sprayed with any pesticides. So let me show you this plant here that comes in view right now. Is called Stachys monieri humelo, and this is actually a plant that I did plant this summer. And I have to say I'm quite pleased with this plant. You see it's growing actively. The leaves are healthy, shiny green, and I think this plant will make it. And it's interesting, I bought this plant in the assumption that it is a drought-tolerant plant, but a reader on my garden blog, which is organicgardendreams.com, my blog, if you also want to hop on that and just see photos from the garden or from other gardens that I have visited. So a reader there made a comment when I showed photos of this plant that this is actually not a drought-tolerant plant. So I'm a little confused. I didn't have the time to do research, but what I can say, and you can see it, this plant is doing pretty well and has survived our summer well. If I just go over here a little bit to the left, I don't even know if you can see it. The lighter soil was a plant. It was a succulent, and surprisingly this one died and just need to be replaced. Let me move over to the other side of our front yard. So another plant that I planted, actually I don't know if it was the end of the summer or the beginning of autumn, is Verbena bonariensis, and this is really actually quite a bummer. The plant looked so beautiful. It had very airy, very small lavender colored blooms, And when I bought it and then I planted it, and a lot of the plant became brownish and died back. And you can see if I go closer that there is no new growth, but there are no blooms. So, and to be quite honest, I don't even know if this is a perennial here in my area. So, but it is what it is, so I will just keep it and hope that it will grow in and start to make new leaves and maybe even produce some flowers. But I have to say I'm quite disappointed. The plant looks really much worse than when I bought it, and when I planted it, it was a very nice plant with lots of blooms, and I had dreams that the blooms would weave through my roses in a very charming way, but obviously this is not happening, at least not this year. So here I can show you, these are two more Stachys monieri Hamelo, the plant that I just showed you. So I have them in containers still, and I'm thinking where to plant them. And this one does reasonably well. But if I go over to this one, I'm guilty to not have watered the plant for, I think, 2 days, maybe 3 at the most. And you see, I think it will survive, but a lot of the leaves in the center of the plant will die off. So it's still so hot here that we have to basically water plants in containers every day, which is quite stressful, as you can imagine. If you're holding a job and to keep an eye on everything is not so easy. Moving on, here comes the first rose inside that is blooming nicely. I have to say, yesterday we had again very windy conditions. It was a very hot, dry wind, and the leaves are a little bit, the edges of the petals are a little bit dried up, but you can still see this is a beautiful rose, very beautiful color. The name of the rose is the Prince. So this is quite a rose that I think is stunning, except, and you can see it here, this one has mildew, and it just tints the pleasure having this rose a little bit. But it is forgiven because of these really, really beautiful blooms. And surprisingly, you see there are some more buds, another bloom that's open, some more buds here in the front. Altogether, it still is doing surprisingly well, and I will show you the whole bush, because I think for gardeners, everyone knows that the plant also is very important for the look of the garden, in the garden, not just the blooms. And I think the bush is acceptable. It's more a, it's not so wide, it's rather tall than wide, but it fits well in this area. We are moving on to the next plant that I just planted recently. We are passing another Salvia Mystic Spires Blue, blooming nicely. Here the sun is not shining on the plant, and even if it's the same variety that I just showed you on the other side, there are no bees at all. So, but now we come to the plant that I really would like to show you. This is a daylily. And this is the daylily, the Gentle Shepherd. And I have to say, here I'm really excited. Last week when I did my Periscope tour, I wasn't clear if the plant was growing. And you can see here in the middle that there are really new leaves. These are all new leaves, and that's a very good sign. I think this plant will make it. It has 2 fans, and here is a 3rd one. And you can see also new leaves are emerging. I'm really excited about this daylily because it is supposed to be a pure white daylily, which is very rare, with a green throat. And I can't wait to see the first flowers, hopefully this spring. As we continue our tour, another rose comes inside, which is Our Lady of Guadalupe. And I have to say, this rose is almost always in bloom. It's just flowering its head off, and it's just a very delightful rose. And again, I will step back a little bit so that you can see the whole bush. You see it is full of blooms and buds, even though we have the beginning of November. I will just zoom in a little bit. You can see the spray here, very beautiful pink color. It is a silvery, cool pink color, which you don't find so often in the range of pink roses. Most pink roses, I have the impression, I'm under the impression, are a warm pink color, but I really prefer the cool pinks. Moving on, here's another spray of Our Lady of Guadalupe. Here a little disaster comes into view. This is another Verbena bonariensis, and as you can see, this plant looks pretty dead, and I think that's exactly what it is. So I'm very disappointed. I really think the transplanting shock did it in. I don't know what happened, but that's my only explanation. I didn't lose sight of watering this plant, but I think here is nothing that can be rescued, so I will rip it out and substitute it with another plant. Very sad, because the plant itself, I think, is a very beautiful plant and it could have looked wonderfully here. As we are moving on, exactly the same plant comes inside, another Verbena bonariensis, and this one is doing a little better, and I think you get maybe a little bit of the idea why I liked the plant initially so much. It's very airy. You can see how the sun shines through the plants. So if something is planted close to the plant, this plant will not smother it, but it will kind of weave through the plant, and I really had hoped that this would happen with this one and the rose, which is blooming here on the left-hand side, which is another Our Lady of Guadalupe rose. Let me just go back. Here is one flower, which I think it's a new one. Yay, at least one success. And you can see oops, I'm losing, where's the bloom? I can't see, here. I'm sorry, I just lost sight for a moment what's really on the screen, because the sun is still very strong and was very glary. I couldn't see if I was showing you the blooms. So this is a bloom, and you see it's a lavender, very delicate bloom. You will see what will happen. Maybe this one will recover and I will see some blooms of it this year. So as we continue, as I said, here's another Our Lady of Guadalupe floribunda rose. Not so many blooms at this point on that one, but still a few buds. And then we are moving on, and we are reaching another daylily, the gentle shepherd. I like to repeat the same plant so that I get the same color at the same time when they are in bloom, so that the garden is not becoming a hodgepodge of colors or very restless. So another gentle shepherd daylily. It was not doing well when I bought it, actually, and I even negotiated the price down a little bit. It has 2 new leaves, so this one is also rooted in, and I think it will survive, so I'm pretty happy about that. The fresh green always makes me happy, and coming from Germany, for me it's still a miracle that in November plants are really starting leafing out instead of shutting down for the winter and just kind of pulling into the soil. So I'm really curious how this plant will look next week, and I think we will see some progress there. Continuing my tour, we will stop by of another rose that I planted relatively recently. This is Lavender Crystal, and as you can see, the rose starts really to grow and is doing relatively well where it gets sun. And I will show you a bloom. This is, I think it's a very sweet bloom form, if you can call it like that. It is very hot, and again the petals are shriveling a little bit, but I think you can still see how beautiful the color of the rose is, and also the bloom form. What is also very obvious is that where the rose gets sun, it's really growing nicely, and then in the part in the back where the decorative wall that we have here is shading the plant, it's not growing so well. So if it would have been for me, I would have never put in this decorative wall, because it makes it very hard for the plants to grow here, but this is how the house came. Nonetheless, this rose will be fine, it's growing nicely, and next year will be its 2nd year, so I really expect it to bloom and grow much more vigorously. Going to the left, I will step back a little bit, This is Marie Pavier, and you can see this rose has really a pleasing bush form. There are plenty of blooms, there are still plenty of buds, and it is super healthy. And just a little reminder, I'm gardening organically and I don't spray, so the rose is naturally healthy, which is not so a given for any rose. Let me just catch a spray for you and turn it so that you can see the beauty of this rose. Again, Marie Pavier. Very, very beautiful rose, very fragrant, and almost always in bloom in my garden. Here I had a little mishap. This empty space here, I should see some hardy geraniums here, but they are completely gone. And I don't know, I have cut the old leaves back, but they should have leafed out by now again. And there were some leaves, but I think some rabbits were getting into the front yard and just munching on them, so maybe I lost these plants too. And what you can see here, this is really my nemesis. This is a sprouting palm seed. Let me just pull it out. Yeah, and here you can see it. Pretty interesting. Let me just show it to you where I also can see what I see on the screen. Do you see the big seeds totally soaked full with water and probably nutrients? So this is another palm growing in my garden, and I have to say it has self-seeded itself. I have literally hundreds of palms like this here, this one here growing in my garden. And this will become a palm like this. I have to say I don't see anything because the sun is totally glaring my screen, but I hope you see the huge green palms that we have in the front yard. And the seed that I just show you, and I will come back to it, is coming from this palm. There it is. So this was just a little distraction on the side. The next rose that I want to show you is Pretty Jessica. This is a David Austin rose. And what's actually very nice about this rose is that it stays small. Again, I step back a little bit to show you the bush. So it is a small rose. David Austin roses can totally get out of hand here in California. So it might sound a little bit weird that I'm pointing out so much that this rose stays small, but if you have a small garden, then it is actually important that the rose size is kind of somewhat predictable, and not that you get a rose in the end, or that you end up with a rose in the end that is 6 foot by 8 foot if you just have space for 3 foot by 4 feet rose. And that's often how they are described, but in California, David Austin roses become very often much, much, much bigger. So I will take you now to the backyard, and we will pass actually my gardener who's working with his colleague on our drains that are clogged. So this looks a little bit like a construction site in the moment, but it looks like they are able to open the drain, which would actually be very helpful because we are expecting our winter rains. They are called El Nino, and they can be quite strong here. So I hope they can open the drain and repair it, and I can show they just got a piece out, and you can see this is part of the drain. You can see how it is cut open on the side, and palm roots were growing into this drain and totally clogging up this drain. So let me just take you to the backyard. We will leave the gardeners who are opening our drains, and I will show you some more roses in the backyard. Here we're just passing an iceberg rose, having some cheerful, nice flowers. So I'll just see if I can get through here. Yeah, this is the gardeners are working here. They are putting water into the drain to see if it runs through. And you can see here the puddle of water. There is the opening of the drain, and it is going down, but very, very slowly. So they still try to open the drain. Seems to be the case that we have 2 clogs, one that I just showed you in the drain pipe that they took out, but one unfortunately underneath the concrete path and they try to open it up and take roots and soil and stones out with a metal snake. So I just hope that they are successful. Otherwise, that will be kind of a little bit of a disaster for us, because we would have to take up the concrete. So I just hope that this is not necessary. Let me just see if I can step through here. I'm wearing sandals and I might get wet feet, but that's not the biggest problem. So I made it. And let me take you to some more roses to look at in the backyard. So what you see here is our pool area. You see here on the right side there is a bed which I try to plant up only with white plants. It's looking okay right now, but nothing necessarily to write home about. But of course it is also November here in our area. But I have to say I'm quite happy with the stage of the bed, because the big plants, especially the roses that I wanted to be in this bed, are all put in and are growing, and now I just have to fill it up a little bit more with companion plants. So let me just take you further, and we will have a few more rose blooms to look at. So the first one is actually one of my favorite. We are just approaching it right now. This is Neptune. Neptune is a lavender colored hybrid tea rose. I cannot say too much about the health of the plant yet, because I don't have it too long. It's growing in a container right now, but obviously the flowers are strikingly beautiful, very nice color, and I can tell you it also has a nice fragrance. Here's another one, and you see here in the way I'm sorry, hybrid teas grow. Here's another cane producing a flower at the end. The rose so far is healthy but not super vigorous, so I just have to observe how it goes, but I think I will plant this in the garden. Then here to the right is another rose which is called Sweet Chariot, and you can see this is a very cheerful rose. It really also has this cottagey feeling to it, and it blooms quite profusely in my garden. So this one also will go into the garden. It's still growing in a container, but it has passed the test. It's healthy enough, it's vigorous enough. This one I will plant out in the garden, hopefully this autumn or winter at the latest. So and let's pass these roses, and I want to show you one more. This one I think is really quite a beauty, and as always when I'm in the backyard, the wind is freshening up, and I hope the sound is not too bad for you. So this I think is a very beautiful rose. This is Mary Rose, another David Austin rose, and this one will actually most likely go in the area where the gardeners were digging out the drain pipe. There's now a big hole anyways, and I think this one I will plant there. So this is Mary Rose, a beautiful David Austin rose, and this, for example, just proves my point, what I'm saying. It's growing in a container, and you can see how tall this rose already is, even though the roots are very the space for the roots are very limited. And you see it's a big rose, tall rose, but that's also a vigorous rose, but that's exactly what I need for my front yard, because this rose will grow very closely in close proximity to a queen palm. So it needs to be very vigorous. Let's just move on to the last rose for today that I would like to show you. This is, in my opinion, a very special rose because it's such a special color. This is called Nimbus, and it's actually a little bit of an older Floribunda. And I don't know if the iPhone camera is really getting the colors across, but this color has a coloration I would describe as mauve, tan, and depending on the season it can be really brownish. So it's kind of an oddball color, something special, and I have to say I like this one very, very much. So I hope you enjoyed today's tour. If you want to see more from my garden or other gardens that I blog about, please go to my blog organicgardendreams.com. I repeat, organicgardendreams.com. So there is an S at dream, at the word dream. It's organicgardendreams.com. Please visit me there as well, and you will find more photos from my garden. You find also all the plant names, and you find also stories about other gardens that I have been visiting. Thank you so much for joining me today for this scope. I would like to let you know that I will continue to scope weekly about my own garden, but up to now I only scoped on the weekends. I will change that. I will kind of mix and match the times a little bit to see if I can reach different viewers. But I hope you will join me again. If you liked what you have been seeing today, please become a follower, and then you get a little announcement before I come live, or of course you always can watch the replay on Periscope later. Actually, broadcast gets deleted on Periscope as after 24 hours, but most of my Periscope scopes I also publish later on my blog. So if you have missed a few, no worries, go to my blog organicgardendreams.com and you can find them there. Again, thank you so much for viewing today. Happy Halloween for everyone who celebrates it, and I hope I will see you in about a week. Bye!